Before and during the pandemic, Mrs. Jurado was cleaning her home every day. Her family's apartment had serious mold problems caused by humidity. And no matter how much they cleaned with Clorox or ran dehumidifiers, the apartment walls were still wet to the touch. And worse, the mold was making her kids sick and giving them rashes.
Eso lo descubrí después que yo enfermé de COVID. Pues tuve que encerrarme en el otro cuarto sola. Como estuve encerrada casi un mes y medio casi, como eso se descuidó durante mi enfermedad, es cuando el moho empezó a crecer bastante y ellos empezaron a presentar el salpullido en su piel.
The mold and humidity were so pervasive that after only one day, the children's mattress began to rot. So Mrs. Jurado called her landlord repeatedly. She documented in impressive detail every wet surface, every mold growth and crack in the walls, and she sent them. And the landlord just refused to make the repairs, even though the law requires it.
Esos días que estábamos más peor con la pandemia, yo hice la cita, su doctora los vio por videollamada y vio como ellos estaban llenos de su cuerpo, de las ronchas. Tuvieron mucho medicamento, incluso Elmer todavía está con ese medicamento.
A pediatrician at a local community health center referred Ms. Jurado to Children's Law Center. And although the city was shut down because of the pandemic, Children's Law Center had figured out how to investigate and advocate remotely. Kate and one of our investigators used FaceTime to see the extent of the damage and figure out the best path forward. Because the conditions were getting worse and the pandemic kept the family inside, we knew the boys wouldn't get better without immediate action. The landlord needed to make repairs as quickly as possible.
So I contacted the building's representatives, listing out all of the dangerous housing conditions, concerns Mrs. Jurado had raised with them many times. I then filed what's called a demand letter, which notes all of the housing code violations that the landlord made and what they need to do to remedy each issue. And thankfully, we didn't have to go to court for the housing conditions, but we didn't take the landlord's word for it either. We made sure that all of the repairs were made.
Fue rápida la respuesta después que ustedes nos empezaron a ayudar, la organización de ustedes empezó a ayudarnos, las respuestas llegaron rápido. Se siente mejor porque incluso es que ya después que arreglaron su cuarto, compramos sus nuevas camas, ya comenzamos a traer todos sus muebles nuevos porque todos los tuvimos que tirar a la basura porque se pudrió todo totalmente. Entonces ya ellos ya están más felices de estar cada quien en su cama, ya no dormir en camas inflables.
As Kate got to know the family, she also learned about Elmer's love for his service dog, Junior. Elmer's mom and dad noticed he was having difficulty keeping up in school and had a hard time connecting with his classmates. His service dog helped him connect, but the landlord refused to let Elmer keep his dog. We knew the family had a legal right to keep Junior, and they already had all the paperwork they needed from doctors and social workers. For 12-year-old Elmer, our legal work quickly became not just about his physical health, but about his emotional health too.
It became clear to me how much Elmer needed his service dog, and particularly now during the pandemic when he's disconnected from his regular routines, from his classmates, his teachers and aides.
Su IP empezó desde muy pequeño, desde los 3 años. Siempre hemos tratado de encontrar mejores terapias desde que los doctores me dijeron que él nunca iba a hablar. Pues yo no me enfoqué en que lo que me dijeron los doctores, sino que buscamos ayudas. Y de repente apareció mi sobrino con su hermano y traían un perro. Se enamoró y no pudimos separarnos.
The family and Mrs. Jurado in particular took all the right steps to prove Elmer had a legal right to have a service dog. Mrs. Jurado shared notes from doctors, social workers, explaining to the landlord why it was so important for Elmer to keep Junior, but his rights were repeatedly denied.
Cuando tuvimos que sacar el perro la primera vez, eso nos deprimió. se nos enfermó de un dolor de cabeza, depresión, no quería comer, no dormía, tenía sueños todos los días, se levantaba gritando en las madrugadas.
We determined it was necessary to file a complaint with DC's Office of Human Rights on the grounds of disability discrimination. But as is so often the case, once a DC resident has representation, we don't have to go to court at all. Just the act of filing that complaint compelled the landlord to do the right thing. And a few days later, the landlord granted the Jurado family's request for Elmer to keep his service dog.
Cuando ustedes nos enviaron la respuesta, que la respuesta de los managers del edificio había sido que sí aprobaban, se lo dije a Elmer y perdón, me emociona mucho porque él saltaba de la alegría al ver a mi hijo feliz, estaba tan feliz.
How did you feel being able to have Junior with you and not being afraid of having to hide him or anything like that?
I feel proud that I have a dog.
Pues Junior nos ha traído prácticamente mucha alegría y en la vida de él ha traído mucha responsabilidad porque él se encarga, yo le he enseñado que él tiene que encargarse de la limpieza de él, de su comida.
Y usted es, bueno, que es una madre que es una luchadora, que usted lucha mucho para sus niños y es muy, muy bello para ver.